Hello, this is Yarrow, and welcome to Vested Capital, episode number 13, featuring my guest, Marcel Hirsch from Tiliter. Vested Capital is a podcast about how people make money and put their capital to work. I interview startup founders, angel investors, venture capitalists, crypto and stock traders, real estate investors, and leaders in technology. Today, I'm extra excited to have my guest on the show because he is the CEO and co-founder of a company that I actually did an angel investment in via the AngelList platform. In particular, Brandon Hill, he was the lead of that investment in this company. It's called Tiliter. I totally butchered the pronunciation of this company. In fact, in my head, I've been calling it Tiliter for many, many months, ever since I invested in it. I never heard it pronounced before. So this is the first time I get corrected. It's Tiliter. Marcel is the CEO and co-founder, as I said. And not only am I excited because I'm an angel investor in this company, but I'm also excited because this is some very cool technology that I think has some massive ramifications for the future. So Tiliter is accelerating the democratization of computer vision. As you'll hear Marcel explain, their entry to market is actually in the groceries retail sector, and they're using computer vision to scan products, in particular fruit and veg, so fruit and vegetables, which, as you might know, often doesn't have a barcode, or in order to get a barcode on it, they have to wrap it in plastic, which of course, increases costs and it's not great for the environment. So their first product in market right now is actually a checkout, a scanner for fruit and vegetables. So a person can come up like you normally do when you go to the grocery store. You put your apple down, your bananas, your grapes, your watermelons, whatever it is. It scans it, identifies it, prices it, and away you go. So that's already replacing, the manual process you might have had to previously do where you type in the number for the product, and obviously that slows things down. That's just scratching the surface of the potential here, but they are very much rolling out initially using this hardware product with the software back into the market. They're in hundreds of grocery stores around the world, as you'll hear Marcel talk about, and it's proving very, very popular, and I suspect certainly for the short-term future, that's where the growth is going to come from. But Marcel is very cognizant of where this is going. He has a vision for the potential of this technology because, as you can imagine, with computer vision, you can start identifying anything in the world. So the potential is huge for collecting data, for making things more efficient. He did talk about one of the next things they're already working on, which is counting the number of human beings waiting in line so they can open up more checkouts as that line gets, past a certain point to make things, more efficient, better customer service, and so on. So again, just scratching the surface, this is going to be amazing where it could take us. But right now, it's just about rolling it out to as many grocery stores as possible. He does actually ask a few questions about, what the future might look like. And of course, I didn't think of this, but it's a great point. There probably won't be a physical checkout, and this probably won't be a hardware solution. At some point, it will just be software sitting on your phone, and your phone obviously has a camera, so it can already be used as a scanner to identify objects in the world. You're probably aware of the Amazon Go stores that exist right now, where you can just walk in the store, you take things off the shelves, and you put it in your bag, and you exit, and automatically charges you. That system is a little bit more clunky as they have cameras all over the actual space to see what you're doing. I could imagine a world where you just have an app, you open it up on your phone, and you just scan each item by hand as you put it into your basket, and away you go. In fact, that's apparently happening already with some stores around the world, since obviously there's barcodes, but this is only going to become more effective, more efficient as computer vision gets better. And Tiliter is very much at the forefront of that and focusing on the software side. This is also well worth listening to as an interview because I do ask Marcel to explain the origin of this, because it's a hardware challenge with software as well. So they had to create a very early beta prototype version, test it out. He talked about some of the mistakes it made in key demonstrations they had to do in front of executives. So that was a bit, and even in front of television, actually, they had a live crew where it didn't work very well. It scanned an item and didn't have the right identification. So some very cool stories from the startup journey, but it is actually well and truly in market now, and it's a functioning product. And that's very much why I decided to invest. A, they have traction, it's working, huge chains around the world are using them, grocery stores, but also where this technology is going, I could see it really branch out into some amazing places. So that's what got me excited about. That's why I decided to do an angel investment. And that's why I'm so grateful that we could have a chat with Marcel to talk about this technology, this company, and where computer vision is taking us. Okay, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to this podcast. It's called Vested Capital. You can grab all the latest interviews as I release them. Just look for Vested Capital in your phone app where you listen to podcasts. Maybe you have it open right now. Hit the subscribe button, the plus button, the follow button. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And also, the one sponsor I always mention in this show is my own company, inboxdone.com. We provide email assistants who will step in and take over replying and managing your email and building a system to take you out of the loop so you don't have to complete processes and treat your email like a to-do list each day. So designed to free you up, give you that hour or 2 or 3 or 4 hours that you currently spend in email. You get this person to work with directly who will manage it and reply to your messages for you. Just go to inboxdone.com for more info about that. Okay, now here is the fantastic interview with Marcel. Enjoy. Hello, Marcel. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Yaro. Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me. Really excited to get this going.
Me too. I'm very excited because I love Tiliter and what you guys, I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I never realized there might be a different way to say that, but I love what your company does, especially because it's sort of cutting edge technology. So for everyone who doesn't know what the background story is, do you want to tell us what exactly is your company? What does it do? And what, how far along are you with the development of it?
Sure. So Tiliter's, our vision is really about democratizing computer vision. This is where we initially started out. And talk a little bit about the story, how this all came about and why we believe it is so important for society. So, computer vision has been really transformative for all kinds of industries, right? Like you're mentioning health, retail, manufacturing, right? Everything from autonomous cars to even autonomous stores for what we're seeing with Amazon, for example, with, these Amazon Go stores popping up all over the world. But what we realized very early on that there are no commercial products available that allow these kind of computer vision identification things to happen, or they don't allow this out of the box. And something that you just plug in a wall and it starts working. And that is essentially what we wanted to do, right? And if we went back now, the time around 4 years ago, the catalyst for me and my co-founders was, at uni, we had these subjects where we identified cancer cells on MRI scans using computer vision. And that's the first time we really got into this whole idea of understanding how machine learning and computer vision could really change and transform society. Coming back to that point, what we realized very early on, that unless you have this principle of making computer vision accessible to the world, you need to, in order to do that, you need to create easy to use products. And these examples that I just mentioned, such as autonomous cars and autonomous stores, all of them are not self-explanatory, right? If you have to dive into this, unless you have a computer science degree or you studied engineering, there's literally no way for you right now to get this off the ground. And that's exactly what we wanted to do, right? And our first commercial use case for this has been, fresh produce identification. I think this is what everyone knows us right now. Fresh produce is what we're doing. And it comes back to this whole idea of using computer vision really to change the way people shop right now. So, for example, with, when we started with fresh produce, when you go into a supermarket, the first thing that you see is this huge variety of large items of, fresh produce. All of them look very different. And they're all very priced very differently, right? So it depends if you're in the US or if you are in Europe. All these items, look different, priced different. And, once you start your shopping journey, you put them in your basket or in your trolley and you continue shopping, 80% of all the items in supermarkets right now have barcodes. So it's easy for us to identify those just by using the existing scanning technology that's been around for over 40 years. But where you see problems with are items that don't have barcodes, such as fresh produce, right? And when you go through the store, first things, as I said, you're getting fresh produce, but then you're getting other items that have barcodes, and once you continue your whole shopping journey, you go over to the checkout. And really, you don't really, as a customer, all of us are used to self-service checkouts, right? Everyone knows how to use them. You just scan the items, you put them over the scanner and put them in your bag. That's easy. But as soon as you come to the point where you have to do this with items that don't have barcodes, you're in real problems, right? You're struggling because you don't really know what kind of apples you selected earlier, right? You don't know if they were red delicious, royal gala, or anything like that. So you revert to what you think is most likely the cheapest. This is at least a problem that we are seeing here a lot, where people just say, well, I don't know, like the kind of Bravo apple, it's definitely not that apple because this is $8.99 a kilo. And then you got like the Red Delicious, which may be special for $1.99. So there's this massive discrepancy between those different but similar looking items. And then obviously is a massive problem for retailers, like this whole inventory management is something that they're really struggling with. And, like you can even take this to an extreme. Sometimes when you go like to your local Coles or Woolworths, or in the US to your Kroger's and Walmarts, you see, ginger, for example, costing $49 a pound or like a kilo, right? And then you have those brown onions or red onions that cost maybe 49 cents a pound. Right. So there's this massive discrepancy, right? Even though they're completely different, right? But there's no way of like telling this apart right now from a supermarket point of view, right? Like you can't just, unless you have someone standing behind every transaction that anyone is doing, which is, not really feasible. Then this is really a personal thing, that hits home every time. Plastic, right? Like what we're seeing, a lot of fresh produce is wrapped in plastic. And why is that, right? Yes, it's to extend shelf life to a certain extent. But what we're really seeing problems with is when retailers doing this really just to put a barcode on it. And that reason for that barcode is the same way of like 80% of all items have barcodes. It's really to speed that up. And, we think this is unfeasible, like we shouldn't be suffering just because, like it is this speed and also experience factor for the customer. So this is, like essentially that journey that I just took you on. That was 4 years ago, the first time, like me, personally, I'm from Germany, we don't really have self-service checkouts there. But here in Australia, you got probably 60-70% of all checkouts are self-service. And, like figuring all of this out, like on the go was such a nightmare. We decided like, yes, let's put something in here. If you think about computer vision transforming the world, may as well use it for a product that anyone will be using at any given time, right? And, like we developed essentially machine learning, computer vision algorithms. And we can dive in later into the technology and how it works and why it is so different to the normal approaches that we see out in the field. But, that was for us, all right, let's put this in. It's so self-explaining, right? Like it's a no-brainer for anyone, right? It's maybe not the thing when you ask someone, hey, how could you change my shopping journey? Majority of people wouldn't say, just like identify fresh produce, right? The majority of people wouldn't even know. They're like, yeah, it's annoying, but it's not like, hey, this is like my number one pain point. But, it really speeds up the process. And like from a customer experience point of view, it is great.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I first heard about you guys, it was Brendan Hill, actually. And when he was one of your investors and I had an opportunity to be part of his syndicate lead and make a small investment in you guys, it got me excited because I thought, okay, like you just described, it's a very obvious efficiency problem. Simple. It's a great first go-to-market solution to a common problem that I can see you guys and you are getting traction with. But then my mind went, where does this go? Where does identifying objects with computers lead to? And obviously, I thought about cars, autonomous driving now. There is a sense of identifying what's around the car using computer vision to figure out. But I feel like you in particular, Marcel, as a CEO, you must be thinking of the vision of this company. Where is computer vision going to take you? Without maybe giving away all your secrets, I would love to know what is. I mean, I feel like you don't feel limited by just going after identifying fruit and veggies. You see this becoming a much bigger potential market. So where do you see it going?
Yeah, 100% get you. I mean, like the first 4 years of our journey, people refer to us as the fresh veggie guys, like, rather than actually technology company that we are, which is fine. I think I'd like to like a page out of Peter Thiel's playbook where he's saying basically, go after a niche market, dominate that niche market, right? And then expand from there, right? And that's exactly like our playbook, right? It's like we want to dominate fresh produce. We believe this is a winner takes it all market, but it's just the beginning. And the reason why we picked fresh produce, I think maybe in hindsight, we wouldn't have picked it just because, like there are other struggles that you're facing along the way. But, like now we're really embedded. It took a long time to get this off the ground. But the vision is, as I said, democratizing computer vision, like it's going to take 40, 50 years to get there. And, our mission statement is to accelerate computer vision. And then, like by creating easy to use products. So essentially what we did with Fresh Produce was product identification, very specific product identification, right? But this is not necessarily where I see, like I think there are two ways of going about this. Is either you're going really deep into certain areas, niche areas, and you can do this anytime, right? You can do this with fresh produce. The next one may be bakery items. The next one maybe, like even going out of this, maybe, like in manufacturing, identifying hard hats or, like these kind of things. And you can do this, or you can go, broad. And that's essentially where I see Tiliter going, really facilitating computer vision rather than, doing all the heavy lifting every time ourselves. Say, for example, with fresh produce, the heavy lifting was 4 years of, patented and unique algorithms that we developed for that particular use case, which I would say so far set us apart from the competition. But this is not the best use of democratizing computer vision, because if you're doing this for each one of those, it's going to take you a long, long time. It's going to probably take us 400 years to do that rather than 40 years. So, like, and for example, this fresh produce has been like our first product, but, we already have like a second product where we are essentially identifying people queuing up in stores and then feeding that back to the cashiers to open more checkouts, So this is like another, like where this is going, where this like development of, identifying people in the store, because you can use existing infrastructure and open source software on certain things, is much easier than diving deep. And for us as a company, I really see us, like going very broad, offering this, facilitating this, via platforms or really via broad products where people can just plug them in and potentially even have the chance like to develop their own algorithms.
Okay, interesting. So very much in the, I guess, retail space at the moment is where you guys are playing in, which makes a lot of sense. Would you mind just updating us as we record this, how, I'm going to say this right, it's Tiliter, not Tiliter, Tiliter. How far along are you? Like what like level of presence do you currently have in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we're live right now, I think in over 58, 60 stores, over hundreds of systems deployed. And this is really all across the globe. And this comes back to this winner takes it all market. We started in Europe and in Australia. Australia is that perfect testing ground. It really is hard to crack though, because you got basically 3 retailers controlling Australia, like, with 65% market share. So where, the Europe and US, like you got those big players such as Walmart, Kroger, but small is relative in terms of Australia, but you got those like small champions, right? That have like 300, 400 stores, massive footprints, tens of billions of dollars in revenue. But it's very easy once you have convinced, not very easy, but once you convince like those large, supermarket chains and they become advocates, this is then when you like have to expand like out of Australia. And that's what we did, right? So like we have got our presence now in Australia, in the US, we're going into South America, Central America, Europe as well. And you will see these massive rollouts happening now, like over the next 6 to 12 months, where we really see our technology and we'll see our technology in hundreds and thousands of stores. But, like it took that long, like to really get that confidence.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'd love to know the early days, actually. Before I ask you about the starting point, I'm curious what's the business model with this, and I'm assuming it will evolve over time. But do you rent a unit? Like, is it like a box that you basically put inside a grocery store and they pay a rental fee? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated than this, as we have quite a large product offering. But this is, like if you look at supermarkets, not many supermarkets look the same as say like a Coles or Woolworths. They all look they have like small slight changes, which makes it harder to scale. But nevertheless, like we found, like our 5, 6 product variations that really scale globally. But essentially, like there are 2 things. One is the hardware box, which is essentially like an edge device, like which does all the predictions on the device itself rather than sending it to the cloud and back. This is, like retailers just pay for this on off fee, right? So like they pay that hardware fee and then a yearly software subscription license. That's the business model. And then we've got also like fully contained systems. They're basically like they function as checkouts. And those systems, like they have a scale system in there. They got a pole, a point of sale screen, but also like our underlying technology powering the whole thing. And this is the same business model. So you pay for the system and then for the yearly subscription license.
Okay, got it. So it's sort of like a standalone scanner or a complete checkout. Do you mind if we go back in time, Marcel? And like I think about this, and I can imagine entrepreneurs listening to this, building something physical and technically advanced is daunting to begin with. And it sounds like your background is more medical, if that's right. You were studying, more in that space, biomedical, maybe early on. So take us back to when you first had this idea and you decided to actually go for it. Did you think, okay, I've got to raise $10 million in venture capital just to build a prototype and then we'll go from there? Like, how do you start something as big as this?
Yeah, I mean, my initial background is actually mechanical engineering. So this is where the whole like the designing and like of boxes and like microcontrolling really comes from. I mean, initially, like if I take it back now, like say 4 years, yeah, 4.5 years, we didn't really know anything about like raising funding or like how much do you actually need essentially when you start out. I mean, this is where you start out, right? Like you have no idea. You don't know if you need like $10 million. You think about like, hey, maybe I need $100,000, right? And I'm going to scale this up all around the world. This is, you're that naive, right? Like when you first start out. And this is what we did, like we raised a little bit of money from, really just friends and family, right? We didn't know anyone. It was super hard. That was, again, 4 years ago, I would say like the startup scene looked very different here in Sydney. Very different, right? Like even like angel investors, as soon as you mentioned the word hardware, everyone was just running for the hills. You know, no one, no one really wanted to invest anything like hardware related. Then you have that next point where you say it's not just hardware; it's also going to be in retail, and everyone's like, retail. Oh no, why would we ever invest in retail? Like if you go to a supermarket, nothing has changed in the last 10 years, right? Some of them even say, certain retailers are still using the same technology that they used 40 years ago. But it is time. It's the same with every industry at one stage, like they need to overhaul their systems in order, especially like I think COVID showed this really where you see and all of a sudden retailers need to step up the game. If they don't want to lose to Amazon or like even to, like the gorillas of the world, do these online deliveries, if they don't want to lose, they have to, step up the game. I mean, we never thought about even raising venture capital. We thought, like, hey, maybe, we just need a little bit of money here and there and then scale this up globally. But as you mentioned, like hardware, there's a reason why hardware is called hardware. It's hard, right? And it's not as easy to scale as software. And yeah, like, I mean, along the way, we learned all these lessons and we're like, all right, I think we need some venture capital here, right? But again, like coming back to hardware, it is this competitive mode, that you have really where people look at you and they're like, ah, shit, they're bringing their hardware solution. It's their own, software system on their own OS. And it's very hard to replace. And then you go like to retailers that have those long sales cycles, like of 1-2 years until they buy something, but then they don't change it for the next 5 to 10 years. Right. So once you're in, it's very hard to get out. And you see this with all these legacy systems everywhere in supermarkets all around the world. But yeah, venture capital was until I would say like 2 years ago, venture capital wasn't really on the cards as much.
Okay. Well, you answered half my question. The other half is what did you build first and how much did it end up costing, to create something?
I mean, we all, when we first started Tiliter, we all still used to work our day jobs. Obviously not as efficient anymore as we used to, but this is how we created it, right? Like really with our hard-earned money, everything that we had, like everyone put all the savings in it, and then we got money from our parents. And also like the first, friends that believed in what we could be doing. And this is how we build it, like from a hardware aspect. And obviously, like we needed more money. The more people we hire, the more problems. That's the thing. If you hire more people, you're also like causing more problems, causing more havoc. So we need to raise more and more money. And we did this like in a rolling session rather than, saying, all right, we're raising now $5 million. please all invest. We, raised a lot of like safe agreements, via safe agreements, from institutional investors such as universities, but not really from venture capital until last year in October. This is the first time that we really raised, $5.5 million as part of a venture round. But before, everything was rolling. So we always just raised money when we needed it, and the frequency just became it became closer and closer.
But to go back to the prototype, like, was it, regardless of how much it cost? I'm imagining it's you being a hardware guy. You have that skill set. Were you literally in a garage putting together components and then marrying that with software? Like, how did you physically create this in the first place?
Yeah, so I would say that the first prototype basically looked like an IKEA lamp, and we had a webcam mounted on top of it, and I kid you not, like I was collecting data for 3-4 weeks, like we bought so many fruit and vegetables. We made apple pie for, I think, 4 weeks straight. And this is how we collected the data. This is how we had our initial prototype. Then the next one, I actually welded this out of steel. I don't think we have that prototype anymore, but I think the whole weight of the prototype was like 25 kilos. I kid you not, it was like made out of steel, like all physical steel, and we had like a hardware component attached to it, but really just like anything to get by, right? We didn't have fancy 3D printing technology or anything like that. So we just tried to somehow make it look more commercial. And then we invested in like 3D printing technology, like to really, I mean, this is the thing, right? It's like with startup costs, why they're saying this new generation doesn't need as much upfront money as they used to, right? Because you've got 3D printing technology available, you've got software packages, like back then we were able to use, like open source software. And, that's how we survived back then, like without that, our initial capital outlay of like $1-2 million.
Okay, so just so I understand it in my head, you could get a webcam, a light, some open source software that does basically the interpretation of what the webcam is seeing and attempts to identify the object, and then you try and turn that into something that is commercially viable. Like, it looks like something people would be willing to put into their grocery store. The software functions without bugs. You don't have to go in there and fix it, because when you're rolling it out to a Woolworths or a Kohl's or a Kroger or whatever, an Aldi, I can imagine the first time you were probably sitting there watching it carefully. Please don't break. Please don't break. But to be in as many stores as you guys are in now, you have to trust that this thing is just going to be working day after day, minute after minute, scanning, translating, everything works. So how long did it take to make it to the point where you felt it was commercially viable?
There's so many great stories. Just to, like thinking about that timeline, it took us really 2 years to get, I would say, or like 1.5 years probably, like to get it to a scalable point. So the initial problems that many companies are facing with computer vision is, as soon as the lighting scenarios changes or like the environment changes, the whole system just predicts nonsense, right? And we had this when we went to our first store. I remember also collecting data for a couple of weeks, and like then we had Channel 7, which is this TV show, like in there, I think it was 60 Minutes or something. I can't really remember the program, what it was called. But they rocked up with like a whole film crew, and everyone was expecting the system to work. But for some reason, like, and this is like what you discover along the way, for some reason, our system just wouldn't perform at certain times, and I was just like, there was too much sun in the store and our data was collected at nighttime. These were the initial struggles that we had, right? So we go there and, like the whole film crew, everything is going well. And I'm just like, I'm literally like, I'm sweating, right? It's like I put down apple, it comes up as a watermelon. These kind of things, right? But it was good, right? Like it's this initial learning, all right, how vulnerable are these computer vision algorithms and what do we need to do in order to overcome those initial problems that we faced? And that's what we did, right? Like, and we slowly developed it to that, like that software that you see now in Woolworths, like now, like I'm not worried, like you can go in there right now. And I know 95% of the times that system will be right. I know that, right? And, we're doing hundreds of thousands of transactions every month. And, this is good now, but like, I would say like 2.5, 3 years ago, we still had like these initial problems. And this is just computer vision, right? Like, and it has developed a lot, like these people net algorithms, for example, that you see that identify people. Those things were really shaky a couple of years ago. And now like they have finally arrived at a point where you can deploy them without without too many false predictions.
Right. Yeah. And you triggered a thought when you were talking about the counting of people with computer vision, and you're moving in that direction already. I understand the reason why. You just for simple, we need more staff to man the checkout, or just simple as that, or maybe even calculating retail space and how to distribute food and place products around the store. Where does this become a privacy problem? Because I know you probably had people talk about that, and obviously in countries like China, they're scanning everybody faces. They use their faces to log into things without even needing another human being there. Countries like Australia, Canada, America, it's a little bit more cautious on the side of privacy. So have you bumped into any challenges with this idea that what you're doing might be potential privacy issue? People don't want to be counted, don't want to be scanned. Has there been anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, this GDPR compliance, like we take this very seriously. And it's coming back to this whole idea of having edge devices. Edge devices right now, they don't send that data to the cloud, no video streams. It's really just sending metadata, right? So what the people at, for example, like one of those retailers will see is essentially, all right, now like two people are lining up, but they can't see who is lining up. Or what they see is, all right, we're at full capacity now, please open another checkout or another counter. Or even, here's the real deal about like this people counting and queue detection. It gives them access 24/7 of like what kind of changes, like in their store layout, for example, what kind of effect they will have, right? And they can track this every day, right? So like they're changing one thing now, like a week later, they can assess all the data. And it's like, well, we moved one checkout over here, and all of a sudden, we were able to reduce our checkout time by 10 seconds per person, which is massive, right? And if you think about this is normally what consulting firms are getting paid for. Like what a KPMG or PwC, what they're getting paid for, like sending people in there and making sure that those statistics come back to the retailers. Now, essentially, what computer vision allows you to do is giving them access to this kind of data 24/7, right? Without breaching any of these privacy, problems that you just mentioned. Because I believe it is a real problem, right? Like if I was able to identify every time you go into a store, right? I mean, yes, there's the other side, there's the flip side of the coin, where you could say, well, I could now target this particular person with advertising, like with dietary requirements and all of that, right? But we all know Australian and like the Western world in general, right? It's not really seen as an advantage to the customer, rather as a disadvantage, right? Funnily enough, like if everyone is okay, for privacy, for Facebook to collect all your information, right? Or like for Siri when you're talking to it, right? Like everyone is fine with that, but as soon as it comes to all right, now like we may target you when you go to a supermarket to make you aware of the latest deals. But again, like we have to be compliant with whatever kind of regulations we come under, and I still believe it is great the way we're doing it right now, but I see like a massive change probably in society in the next couple of years where people are okay with that. Right. If I go in the store, I don't drink normal milk. I just drink almond milk. Right. It'd be good. It'd be good to show me, okay, where is that almond milk? Right. And right now, like you're doing this through apps, but I believe computer vision might be, like the better solution there in the future.
Yeah, I can imagine like all the science fiction movies I've seen where an ad pops up where you're shopping and it's, a hologram telling you something. But like you said, it could be a search-based tool as well. You're wondering where this item is in the store, and they already have data about you. You want milk. When you say milk, it's almond milk. It's in aisle 4, etc. Interesting. Would you mind taking us back, though, to the point where you move past that early stage? The apple is no longer scanned as a watermelon. It's actually working. You're comfortable with it rolling out to many, many stores. How do you then expand and scale, given this is, like you said, it's a hardware solution. It's a physical product. Even though I think it's really a software problem, ultimately, you still have this physical device you have to place in stores. And you've expanded globally from Sydney, which is obviously far away from a lot of these places in Europe. How did you go from that working first version to convincing these big chains to actually give you a chance and prove it works for them?
Yeah, one thing to understand, I believe around 2011, the first fresh produce identification systems popped up around the world. And, like back then, I believe IBM was involved in this, that then got sold to Toshiba. But what happened was back then, obviously, you didn't have that computational power. Like you may have the algorithms, but you didn't have the computational power in order to process what those algorithms are giving you, right? And essentially, a lot of retailers put a lot of money into this kind of technology back in the 2010s, 2011s, right? What ended up being happening was that the majority of retailers got burned by it, and burned in a bad way, that like they had all these capex costs of machine algorithms or machine learning algorithms that didn't have any relevance for the retailer. They just couldn't use it, right? It would never work. Those initial problems I talked about earlier, that's exactly what they were facing, right? And all of a sudden it was 12 p.m. and everything came up as as a steak, right? These kind of things. And for us, initially, what we did is we built up a team in Germany. And that was super important, like to service our biggest clients, and essentially how you convince those big clients, and comes back to this whole thing about the principle of, having easy to use products. Essentially what we did is, like we took our systems and took this to the headquarter, right, and invited hundreds of executives, right, and maybe 10, 15 ended up coming, right, to their store. And we demoed it in front of them, right? We gave them basically the opportunity to demo everything to their own folks. Right? Everyone was super interested that, hey, if this works, yes, we will put it in everywhere, right? But yeah, obviously a lot of skepticism. And once they were able to show it to their superiors, to their executives, all of a sudden this got really momentum, right? And that's how we did it in Europe. Here in Australia, we actually used the momentum that we created in Europe to bring it back to Australia. So the first stores were in Europe, not in Australia, right? But then obviously Australia is this small puppy syndrome, right? Like you don't want to miss out when someone, especially in retail, is innovative or like trying these new things. So like you want to do that here as well. And we ended up like having really good products. And then like the US, so we always knew in order to crack the US, you need people that have a lot of existing relationships. You need basically gray hair kind of salespeople, kind of people that done this already, like maybe it was 20, 30 years ago with something unique. For us, in our case, it was someone that, was one of the co-founders of a scale management software company. So he had done that, 20, 30 years ago, sold to all these massive retailers out of their garage, right? So essentially, I messaged him, like we had some very good talks, and I was like, what you did there 20, 30 years ago, can you do it again? Can you do it for, what we are offering? And he said, all right, I'm willing to give it a shot. And this is really now, like, I mean, we're live with, Albertsons, it's like one of the largest retailers in the US. There are a couple of other ones that I unfortunately can't mention right now that you will see where those systems will pop up in the next probably 2-3 months. And, like you don't get access to these kind of customers if you don't have someone on the ground that has done these kind of things before. I mean, essentially some of them is like a multi-million-dollar deals, right? You can't just like walk into the executive room. It's like, hey, please buy this, and please buy it for 50 stores. It's not going to work unless you have those relationships.
When are you coming to Canada? When can I actually experience one of these, Marcel?
We're trying. Hopefully soon. Hopefully by the end of this year. Like we've got some, like you got the Sobeys, the Loblaws. We got some of them already interested, and it's just there for us now, pushing them over the line to trial this kind of technology, because it is mind blowing when it's working. Unfortunately, you left Australia now. Like otherwise, you would have the best experience here.
True. So take us forward with the future. Then I know you already kind of mapped out some of the ideas with where computer vision might go sort of over 40 years, but what with Tiliter in the next sort of 5 to 10 years? Is it just a case of like you said, it's like a winner take all kind of scenario. Is it just a case of trying to get into as many grocery stores around the world and just become the de facto tool for scanning whatever needs scanning in a retailer, a grocery retailer? And also, what is the challenge there? Is it simply the relationships and the slow sort of convincing sales cycle you have to go through, or is it really about building a team in every single country, and that also takes a lot of time?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. It is, yeah, first of all, you need a team. And you just need that team, like to really give those retailers the confidence in you, right? I mean, they've heard it all before, software companies that try to scale, like from if it's Israel, Australia, or any other country. It is tough, especially for us. It's really crucial to keep those relationships, but also build up on these relationships that we're having with those retailers to, get more of these new next generation products. For example, what I'm seeing right now is, like we're doing fresh produce recognition on checkouts, which is great, right? But I also believe that the next horizon, there might not be any more checkouts, in 10 years time. There might not be any, right? Or you will see them maybe similar to like petrol cars in 20 years, right? Like everything is going to be electric. And that's probably like how you see checkouts as well. So obviously we don't want to put all our money, all our innovation into something that might become redundant. So what you will see a lot from us is we will be going into mobile. And we already, doing a couple of things there with mobile where, you just use your phone in order to identify, what kind of item it is, pairing this then with the weight that is measured somewhere. As from a legislation point of view, how you do this, that is another story. But I believe, like us, we will go like into mobile. We will go into more areas where we don't necessarily need integration. Integration is always key, right? Integrating into a retailer system takes a long time. Yes, it gives you that competitive mode, just because, others have to do the same thing again, right? Which timeline sometimes can vary between 6 to 12 months. But I believe the future will be not just in autonomous stores, the ones that you see at Amazon Go, but you will also see like a hybrid version where people use their mobile phones or potentially even, their next gadgets. Right now, I think everyone's got like these smart watches, maybe it's smart glasses, smart contact lenses, whatever it's going to be, right? But using this and really like transform this whole company more and more into a software company. Right now, like I would say, like from our revenue perspective, 80% of this goes back to hardware, 20% to software, right? But this will change now over the next couple of years where we will make more and more money from not just recurring revenue, but also offering software packages without hardware involvement. Like and from a CapEx point of view, that's essentially where we see this whole industry is going. You will see a lot from us that will support mobile phones. And not just mobile phones, also handheld scanners and these sorts.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong then. If I'm reading what you're saying, it would be like I would go to the grocery store, I'd put everything I want to buy into my bag. I bring it to an area where I could then, or I could even do this as I'm shopping. I guess I have my phone out. I take an item off the shelf. I just use the camera to look at it. It adds it to an app, which is the app for that grocery store chain. I just put it straight in my bag. It's added to my list of things I'm buying in the app. I just do that as I'm shopping, and then I just click buy, kind of like I would do it with online shopping, except I'm doing it in the real world. And like the technology, you won't need barcodes because the computer vision would just know this is a product. It could just read whatever the box is and even the writing on the box, and it would identify any kind of object or packaging whatsoever. Is that kind of what you're painting as a picture of the potential future?
So this is already happening. Right now it's happening with barcodes. So, like the stores that I was mentioning, say, for example, with Woolworths, like we're, I think, live in, 35 stores where you do this exact thing that you just mentioned, like you take a photo of the barcode, it scans it already. It doesn't take a photo of the item and recognize the item, but just does the barcode. And now like the part that doesn't work is the fresh produce, right? This is why we have those whole checkout systems where you place the item down and then it just pops up with a barcode as well, right? But I'm seeing, going forward, you will see less and less of like these checkout systems, and you will see more and more of mobile recognition. like where you potentially don't even need those checkout systems, like because you do everything, as you just said, on the app.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like we're getting used to doing it with QR codes too, to look at the menu with COVID. And it's like everyone sort of expects, the phone to be the interface for everything, or the watch or whatever. Or like you said, a portable hand device that you could also use if you don't have a phone. In terms of growth of the company, I'm really asking this too as a small minority, tiny little investor in what you're doing. What is the timeline for all of this? Like I can see what, as long as you remain excited, Marcel, individually, you personally, you're going to be here for a long time growing this company. But where do you, like, how does a company like yours grow over the next 2, 4, 10 years? Because it is hardware, so it is a bit slower. It is a slower sales cycle. Like you said, this may be a transition period too, as you move away from hardware to more phone and app-based solutions. Obviously, you need to keep raising funds to keep building the team. Every time you hire a new developer, you said you need to have more money to pay them. And I ask this because I'm a software web kind of guy, and I kind of understand how that works. But in the hardware world, I feel like you have to be really careful with your capex, your expenditure. You're raising funds as you go along. You can't just bootstrap. It's very difficult to use the money you're making to keep growing. So how do you take the next sort of 3, 4, 5, 10 years in scaling and manage everything? You're the CEO, so I'm sure you're thinking about this every single day.
Yeah, and it's a good question. For us right now, we basically bootstrapped, I would say, bootstrap in the sense with a little bit of capital until middle of last year. And now we really have taken some fuel from venture capitalists in order to really go after those, large markets, right? It's like we always said that if we just want to do fresh produce, we probably wouldn't have to raise any capital, right? It's just like you become capital efficient, you got your subscription fees, you're selling the hardware with a margin, so this is all working well. But in order to take on really the world and democratize computer vision, you will need a lot of funding. And the reason why you need a lot of funding is to run experiments. So I'm a huge fan. I'm a product guy, right? Like I love like running experiments and just finding out, like after a very short time, like, is this working or is this not working? Right. But you need that internal conviction as well. I think this is super important, right? We're convicted that computer vision is going to be the future, right? Like if you look at fourth industrial revolution, computer vision is a massive part of this, right? Like it will transform society. We know that, right? So conviction wise, nothing is missing there. It's just like, how do you get there? In order to run those experiments, we will need access to money, right? If that means, like more venture capitalists or, at one stage, taking the company public, and then really, I love that from Jeff Bezos when he took Amazon public, and he said like, yeah, the stock market, for some reason, like all our internal numbers went up, right? But the stock market, like all our numbers went down, right? But we knew like inside Amazon, like we had something really great here. And, I believe, like if we go public or if we stay private for, a couple of more years, nevertheless, like the future of the company, I think, is secured. We just really need to execute along the way, doing more of those experiments. And this is, like the company's DNA, right? We are product focused. We are a very product driven company. In order to figure out like the right things and the right products along the way, you just need capital. Right now, we are not, like in order to keep growing, like we're 55 people now, right? But I hope like in a year's time, like that we will double or triple that. And just because there's so much opportunity out there, right? Computer vision, if you think about this, everything that right now that we are seeing, some of this can be taken care of by machines. And it's so much better. It's so much more convenient and, more efficient for us humans.
No, I love it. I love the vision. I love the future focus here and the product focus too. Maybe like kind of wrapping up here a little bit, Marcel, I'm curious, being a product guy, you must feel like you want to have your hands involved with every experiment. But what really is a day in the life of Marcel as the CEO of Tiliter? Are you still playing with product, or are you more about hiring and firing people with your day-to-day kind of role, or building relationships? What do you do every day?
Yeah, I'm still like massively involved in product. I will never give that up. I think Bill Gates, like even like until the last day, he was in every product review meeting that the company ever had. So I see myself the same way there. I do a lot of things in terms of hiring. Hiring is really what I'm focusing on now. And it's about not the people that you're hiring tomorrow, but it's the people that you will be hiring in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, right? So we have a great network from people, like through firms such as AngelList, like where you have a lot of individual investors and everyone is willing to help. I think this is what I love about AngelList, but even like Eleanor Ventures or Flightfox Ventures here from Australia. And they have a lot of people, all of them are willing to help. And, potentially some of them could become your next hire, your next VP of engineering, your next VP of sales, right? So that's a lot of what I'm doing. And then obviously, keeping the lights on, speaking to venture capitalists. We are in that process of, just ramping up for Series B. So, I'm spending a lot of time there and building relationships, obviously, still the steward of the culture, the company culture. I don't see that changing much, and then obviously, thinking about strategy, really not thinking about this short-term strategy about like the next year. I think the company really has got that, but the next 3, 5, 10 years, I think Elon Musk is like great at this, pointing out like how the world will look like in 500 years time and slowly taking it back, right? Like how does it look like in 100 years, 50 years, 10 years? What do we have to do in order to move the needle? And I'm spending I'm spending my whole life essentially looking for the right kind of strategies, right? And none of them will be perfect, there will be adjustments along the way, but I'm fine with that.
No, I love it. I love it. Exciting industry you work in, and being a product guy, it must be so satisfying to see these things roll out and perform, and then you get excited about the next iteration and the next experiment. Any kind of websites we can send people to, and you no doubt you're hiring too. So, any specific job openings you want to highlight before we end the call?
Data. So we're really looking for a head of data, head of AI. I mean, you can't have too many machine learning engineers, and you always need to be super careful that they're not getting snatched up by like those big corporates, the FANG companies. They just have obviously so much money at their disposal, but like from what we're seeing, we get a lot of great talent, and the reason why we're getting that talent is because it is exciting. It is exciting what we're working on, right? I mean, we talked about fresh produce identification. Everyone is using this every single day they go into a store, or like even if you use online delivery, right? Like those online delivery people, they're still using the same kind of technology, right? They still need to check out. They still need to use our systems, right? So end to end, right? Like if it goes more into direction of online or offline, brick and mortar, anyways, like the technology will always be there. Yeah, I mean, for us, please apply. We've got tons of open roles where we would like to hire for. But yeah, engineers, software, hardware, and definitely data and machine learning.
Is that on Tiliter.com, or do you have an external website you use?
Yeah, so it's on Tiliter.com, and there are two web pages. One's so like Tiliter.com, which is really about this whole vision of democratizing computer vision. And then we've got TiliterRetail.com, which is, tailored to our retail customers. But yeah, just head on Tiliter.com and have a look at jobs.
Okay. I'll include all the links in the show notes. Yeah, I really agree with this idea of, working for a company like yours versus, say, joining a FANG, but you might be just trying to make advertising improve their click-through rates and get people to pay more attention to an ad, which is, it's a job, but it's not exactly the sense of fulfillment, improving the world and taking things to a better place. So I think working for a company like yourself at this stage would be way more exciting. Are those jobs all like remote nowadays? Like I know you guys, Australia, Germany are big parts of where you're at, but is it really a global remote workforce now?
I mean, it's not totally remote because you have that hardware element, and you see this. Apple, orders a lot of their employees back to the stores just because what we're seeing a lot of this is, like from a creativity level, it is sometimes really good to have those whiteboard sessions, like to have hardware involved to see, what is possible. But we're getting there right now. I mean, we're in Sydney, we're in the lockdown, so we can't go in the office anytime soon. It's probably going to be another 2 months or something like that. We really want to grow. That doesn't necessarily mean, like it can't be outside of our headquarters. Like I would love to hire more people, especially like in the US, where we see a lot of this. But again, it's probably like a base, we've got a base in Rochester, in the US, in New York. But, like there is potential, that we would be hiring like people on the West Coast or on the East Coast, definitely.
Okay, awesome. All right, Marcel, we'll wrap it up. Is there an email address or a Twitter or LinkedIn account? What do you prefer to give out for you personally if people did want to get in touch for any reason?
Yeah, I mean, I can just like give my personal address. Yeah, I've got two, like if I get too many mails on one. So one is marcel.hertz at tiliter.com.au. So, like feel free to just send me a message if there's anything I can do, or if you're looking for a job, or, potentially even like being a new investor. Always appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I appreciate the time. I'd love to do this in 5 years' time and see where everything is at. I think that'll be an amazing transition and what a story to share. But yeah, keep up the good work, and I love hearing about it. So no doubt I'll hear through Brendan as well as things grow, as he updates the syndicate. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
There you have it, that very fun interview with Marcel, the co-founder and CEO of Tiliter, a company I've done an angel investment. So I'm hoping will become a unicorn, as we all hope as angel investors that the companies we invest in will go big. It already has gone big in terms of a global footprint and all the stores they're entering and all the partnerships they're opening up. So signs are good. You never really know. I think you can tell with Marcel, the sky really is the limit with where this technology can take us. And I'm excited to see what new products and what new solutions come out of computer vision. It's an exciting world to be alive in right now. I'm going to wrap up the show. I hope you enjoyed Vested Capital. This was episode number 13. If there is a friend or a family member or a colleague or maybe someone, even a co-founder of your own, who should hear this interview, maybe you're doing a hardware/software entry product to a new market, maybe using new technology, that's AI, computer vision, cryptocurrency, whatever it might be, but you want to hear a story from someone who's basically started with an idea, turned it into a prototype, and now rolling it out to stores around the world. This might inspire you and or them. So share it with them. Vested Capital episode number 13. You can tell them to go to my website, yaro.blog, go to the podcast tab, but also you can find us on Spotify, Google and Apple podcast players, on Audible and Amazon, where the podcast sections are, pretty much anywhere. If you just type in Vested Capital or Yaro, Y-A-R-O, you will find this show, and then episode 13 for the interview with Marcel Hirsch. Okay, that's it from me. My name is Yaro, and I'll speak to you on the very next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.